Socrates once said, "All I know is I know nothing." In the pursuit of finding life's truths, Socrates never believed that he himself knew the answers, but instead sought to discover them through dialogue. He was once noted to stand in the same spot all day long, pondering upon the mysteries of this world. Socrates' interest in philosophy emerged in his later years, particularly in his 40s, after he had retired from politics. His mother was a midwife, while his father was a stone carver. At a young age, Socrates learned the family trade, working as a stonemason, since this was tradition. He also served as a soldier in the Peloponnesian War, a mandatory measure for men of his age.
Upon his newly discovered obsession with the depths of the mind, Socrates became absorbed in appeasing his hunger for knowledge, once stating, "I shall not give up my philosophy as long as I breathe." Thus he roamed around the streets, questioning Athenian citizens about their beliefs on certain topics and challenging the flaws in their thinking. This sparked an interest among the younger generation, who were more prone to unconventional thought. They gathered around him in the painted stoa, eager to participate in his thought-provoking discussions. One of his students, the eminent Plato, is now known as the divine teacher, carrying on the legacy that Socrates fabricated. However, some despised his new way of thinking, as they were firm in a customary theory.
This became evident in 399 BC, 71 years after his birth, when Socrates was convicted of impiety and corruption. This was mainly instigated by the parents of the youth who studied under the philosopher, and consequently found the ideas that he proposed on his students to be derogatory to their upbringing. He was brought before a jury of 501 of his fellow citizens to be tried on the basis of these charges. During the trial, Socrates and his accusers had to state their opposing arguments and await the results of the vote that would determine his fate. The outcome was relatively even, leading to an additional statement on behalf of both parties. Over the course of Socrates' second testimony, he lost favor in the eyes of the jury due to his act of hubris. He was sentenced to death, and by his own hand drank a cup of poisonous hemlock.
The intriguing concept behind Socrates was the fact that he did not record any of his views. In fact, these were preserved through Plato, who took it upon himself to document Socrates' philosophical conversations. In his novel, Minos, Persons of the Dialogue, he talks with an unknown companion about the subject of law. Here, the use of the Socratic method is presented as Socrates asks a series of questions which ultimately leads to the companion realizing the faults and contradictions in his ideas. The general concept brought forth in this conversation is the argument that the ways in which civilized societies are regulated are reflected by the laws that are imposed on them. This brings Socrates to state that law is discovery of reality, as he feels that by placing laws on citizens, their behavior is truly discovered.
Socrates attested himself to be an inspirational member for both the duration of his time period and also through the people around him. Hence, the diffusion of his methods and theologies had surfaced and began to play at the world stage. In Plato's defense of Socrates, Socrates described how some of the young men attained his style of conversation and accordingly resulted in angering others who thereafter blamed Socrates for corrupting them. Nevertheless, Socrates was essentially notable for seeking the genuine truth. Thus, his willingness to interpret concepts or values through questions, and his determination to accept nothing less than the adequate and the whole, made him the first palpable exponent of critical philosophy.
At this time, Socrates was also aggravated by the sophists and their inclination to teach logic as a means of egotistical reasons, but also their fundamental idea that all things remain relative. Hence, Socrates defied the traditional dogmas of the time and desired to attain pure truth and pure knowledge. In the dialogue, Euthyphro, Socrates introduces the concept where an act isn't considered to be good because God defines it as such, but because it proves itself useful to us and to our efforts of encompassing the better and happier person. But amongst all these tremendous contributions, the principal and most omnipresent would be the Socratic method, due to the fact that even in today's society it remains a powerful concept.
Natural law, or the belief that everything is right by nature, stemmed from Socrates' antagonism to the sophists. Natural law is based on the concept that through our morals and values, we are obliged to restrict and shape our behavior for the good of society. Thus, law, in contrast to this state of mind, proves to be insignificant in governing citizens, as order could be maintained without its existence. Socrates took this approach further to state that justice and good are essentially the same. He said that this good could only be achieved through knowledge, which was attainable by all. In addition, all humans try to pursue happiness, thus pursuing good and knowledge. This creates an endless cycle that is structurally sound.